The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode number 159.
Oi! Don't be scared. All of this is new to you and new can be scary. When people need help, I never refuse. There's this moment when you're sure you're about to die, and then you're born. I know exactly who I am. I'm the Doctor. Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the season premiere of the newest season of Doctor Who. And the title of the episodes is Spyfall Parts 1 and 2. And joining me today on the panel is Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
So, folks, with Father Corey, as you probably heard, is not with us this week, but we'll have something special from him a little later. We'll talk about that toward the end of the episode. But I do want to encourage you, if you can, to go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from and write a review of the show if you can. We'd appreciate that. That helps us to get the show out in front of more listeners who might be looking for a Doctor Who podcast to listen to with this new season available. And, of course, if you have friends who are looking for Doctor Who podcasts, to share it with them as well. We greatly appreciate that. So, Jimmy, we have finally we have a new season. It's been a whole year since we've had a new episode of Doctor Who. And
since New Year's Day.
Yes, exactly. And so we have this 2-part season premiere. The first part dropped on New Year's Day. The second part dropped on Epiphany Sunday, as we have here in the U.S. We celebrate Epiphany on Sunday, and we have the 13th Doctor is back. And I wanted to start with just a sort of you and I to talk about what we think about the 13th Doctor this season so far, the first 2 episodes, versus first season. Has she changed much? What do you think?
I didn't notice her changing much. I did notice, particularly by the end of part 2 of this, they point out a character feature of hers that I think we kind of glossed past in the first season of her Doctor. I didn't notice her really being that different. What I did notice was the writing in these 2 episodes is way better.
Yeah.
This is the best stuff Chibnall has ever written for Doctor Who by far. And the first episode in particular, now there is a big twist towards the end of the first episode, but even before that, I thought this is well written, this is well paced, this is dramatic, this is, frightening. This is really what I'm looking for in Doctor Who in a better way than anything last season. So I thought the writing was a huge step up. I also liked the second part of the 2-parter. One of the things that tends to happen on Doctor Who is the finales tend, for some reason, not to be as great as the setups if you've got a 2-parter. And I didn't like the second part quite as much as the first, but I still liked it. So I thought this was a hopeful sign for the new season, that they may have gotten the message and corrected much of the stuff, not necessarily all of the stuff.
Right.
Because there is a little bit of SJW-ness in this. But they corrected the major problems, which many of the major problems on the writing level.
Right. And to be fair, some of that SJW stuff was present in the Capaldi seasons and that sort of stuff too. So
and it's pretty minor. I mean, it's just little stuff.
It is pretty minor. One of the things I felt like with this was it felt like a John Pertwee throwback a little bit, especially the first episode. Spycraft, vehicle chases, the twist at the end. As we'll get to it, I'm sure everyone already knows what the twist is, but I want to kind of just preserve a little bit of that as we go.
Well, and as you know, we can't even say the title Spyfall without saying the word spy, and so it definitely has that espionage vibe. The title is a play on Skyfall.
Yep.
The James Bond movie. And so we've got all this James Bond stuff, including at one point they go to a birthday party that's themed as Casino Royale, which was the original James Bond novel.
Right. Yes. So, that, and I really enjoyed that part. There's lots of, the spy gadgets and all that sort of stuff. So let's jump into the podcast. Into the episode as we go through this podcast. That starts with a series of
spies
vignettes.
meeting bad ends
Right.
in different parts of the world.
Yeah, they're all on different operations, but they're all meet a bad end at the hands of some kind of creature, alien. We'll find out what they are later.
Special effect. A special effect comes out of nowhere and
Yes.
bad ends them.
Yes, we don't see exactly what it is, but they get attacked. One in Africa on the Ivory Coast, another one on an airplane landing in Tokyo, and the third in Moscow. And we have both MI6 and CIA, and I don't think we saw any Russians, but we get the sense of this is a very broad issue, a very broad problem. And then we're in Sheffield, back in Sheffield in Yorkshire. We have Ryan playing basketball with his buddies, and we find out Ryan's been making excuses to his friends about why he's been gone so much, and presumably traveling with the doctor.
And why does he need to? Because time machine.
I suppose there has to be an issue of we don't want people to age too quickly.
But it like Amy and Rory eventually aged 10 years during their time with the doctor, but
right.
We don't get the sense these people have been with the doctor for 10 years. Nobody's going to notice that, oh, hey, you're 3 weeks older than I thought you were. What's wrong?
Right. Yeah, well, we don't know how long they've been traveling with the doctor in this interim. So, I mean, it's an interesting question.
Well,
but, yeah.
Presumably, I mean, we don't know, but they're not visually older than a year to us, the audience. So they shouldn't have been traveling more than a year anyway.
Well, and then we have Yaz next, who is making excuses about why she's often so often gone from her job, but she keeps pretending she's been seconded to another organization out there instead of being on duty as a probationary officer still. But if she's been gone so much, how would you keep your job? I don't know. It'd be hard to sustain that. But I do like that we had a scene where she's at home with her family, and we see her dad, who's got a very thick Yorkshire accent, trying to make his Amazon Echo work, which it wasn't working. I just thought that was a lot of fun. I'm sure the Scottish version of the Echo is a very interesting version as well. But there's a couple funny YouTube videos about people with very strong accents trying to make their Amazon Echoes work. So then we have Graham, who's at his doctor's office for a checkup. That's another one. I don't think we have there. But all three of them get picked up by men in black. I mean, dark suits, dark glasses, and dark cars.
Yep. And then we get the doctor in an automotive garage with the TARDIS up on blocks,
yes,
which is great.
Up on the lift with all the plumbing underneath.
And the agents show up for her too, and she's like, "Hi, fellas, rocking the ominous look." And Graham shouts out of one of the windows, worst Uber ever.
That's a great line. It's a nice Simpsons reference there to the comic book guy.
Worst episode ever.
Yeah, I love using that line, so I loved Graham's take on it. So then they're in the car, and then we have a talking GPS. So we had the Amazon Echo, we have the GPS, and I'm thinking to myself at this point, is this something having to do with voice control devices? But it's really more about connected devices, as we'll find out. The GPS, worst GPS ever, it ends up vaporizing the driver, and then the car starts driving itself.
Backwards, dangerously.
Yeah, well, first forward, then backward,
In 5 seconds, die.
Yeah, right. Instead of in 10 seconds, turn left. In 5 seconds, die. The doctor manages to reflect the ray beam back on the GPS using the screen of a iPhone or Android phone or whatever.
Oh, I thought she grabbed the rear view mirror.
Was it the rear view mirror? Oh, I thought. Okay. I must have missed that. I must have misunderstood.
Maybe I may have misperceived.
Yeah, but the thing, it was funny that at one point the car stops in the middle of the highway, and they're just sitting there. I'm like, get out of the car! Why are you sitting in the car? Get out! And then the car takes off again. But they managed to get control of things again. And then they get the head of MI6 played by Stephen Fry, which was fun. We knew that he was going to be in this one.
And for people like Americans who may not understand exactly what MI6 is, it's basically the British equivalent of the CIA. So it's an intelligence service that is meant to spy on foreigners not on people in the homeland. The intelligence service to spy on people in the homeland is the British equivalent of the FBI, which is MI5.
Yes. I wonder if there's a 1, 2, 3, and 4, but maybe not.
I think there may have used to been, but I don't know that there is now. Okay. I looked it up once, but I don't remember.
So it's James Bond's employer, basically, MI6. Yeah. We have Stephen Fry's character is the head of the MI6, and they call him C instead of M in James Bond. It's M. For whatever reason, we use initials. And they're bringing in the TARDIS into the MI6 headquarters, and he starts addressing Graham as the doctor, and which his assistant says, no, she's the doctor. He's like, the doctor is a man. I've read the files. And she says, I've had an upgrade. Yeah. How about that? Okay. Yes, that is that old, women are better than men thing. But I have to admit, this might be the only case where it comes right out like that. Yeah. Well, there is another kind of painful line in part 2, where it reflective of seemingly or ostensibly of 19th century misogyny. Oh yeah. But this one, it's implausible. It's just implausible, right? That C is going to know about the doctor and is going to be summoning the doctor and knows that the doctor has apparently, he's got to know he's changed appearance before. Look him up, right, before you meet him. What do the current files say? And it's just implausible that this would happen this way. And it just comes across as, let's just girl power this for a moment just for the sake of doing that. Right, because the files do say, because his assistant knows that Jodie Whittaker is the doctor. Yeah. So it's like, dude, maybe you should have briefed your boss beforehand. Right. So he doesn't look like an idiot on his face. Yeah. Right. So, we had all last season to get over the fact the doctor's a woman. We should be over it now, and so should the writers. Thank you. It comes up a number of times in this, but not as blatantly as this necessarily, but it'll come up several times. So C tells us that every... by the way, one thing, some people I've seen it pointed out that the doctor frequently kind of disses his or her previous incarnation or incarnations. Yeah. And most notably in the case of Colin Baker, change, my dear, and not a moment too soon. Right. So some people have kind of read this. I've got an upgrade line as just dissing standard doctor dissing previous incarnations, but it does not come across that way to the viewer. Right. You have to be a pretty deep fan to know about that history. Right. And even I think I remember with Pertwee's when he first showed up, he actually didn't like his face at first. So he was a little bit more humble about the change. So C tells us that every intelligence agency around the globe has asked MI6 to contact the doctor. And I'm thinking, where's UNIT? Why isn't UNIT doing the contacting? And we're kind of given a brief line. They kind of hang a lantern on that about, there's something wrong with UNIT, or it's gone, or it's not active. Well, yeah. So in the previous New Year's Day special, they had tried calling UNIT, and they got an operator who said it's been defunded. Right. And so this time, the C is telling them, we need you to deal with this alien stuff because we're not equipped to. And the doctor is like, well, what about the groups that are equipped to deal with aliens, like UNIT and Torchwood? And he says they're all gone. Right. And it's like, wait a minute. How? We have had more out in the open alien activity in the Doctor Who 21st Century Earth than ever before. We are now openly living as a hybrid society with Zygons and Silurians. Right. How do you defund UNIT and Torchwood and other groups dealing with aliens? Right. There is a greater need for them now than ever. This makes no sense. Yeah. Well, I could chalk this one up to politicians being politicians, so it could be the case. Even politicians aren't stupid enough to do that. Yeah. So he takes him in to see the spy that had been attacked on the plane. They find her in a hospital bed, and her DNA has been rewritten. She's not human anymore. she's just a shell with a human appearance. She's been erased, essentially. And we find out at the end of the second episode what that's all about. But we won't get there yet. I like this moment in C's office where the James Bond arsenal comes out. Like Graham and Ryan are all geeking out over the laser shoes and rocket cufflinks and all the other stuff. That was a lot of fun.
My favorite in that, and they just mention it, but don't do anything with it, is the tongue immobilizer chewing gum. It's like, what?
I'm not sure where that would come in handy, but
probably be pretty easy to make. You just use a paralyzing agent and infuse it into chewing gum, and okay, your tongue is numb now.
That's right. So that we're told about. C tells him about this fellow named Daniel Barton. He's the founder of Vor, a search engine company.
Yeah, this episode's surrogate for Google.
Yes, Google and Alphabet, which has its fingers and everything. All the spies were that had been disappeared. Were investigating him, and he apparently used to be MI6, although that never comes up again. I haven't even noticed that. They never really make anything of the fact that he used to be part of MI6. So the doctor asks for MI6's best man, who's with an open mind, who she calls Horizon Watcher at first, which is interesting. So, and his code name is O. So she's apparently worked with him before, and but she's told
we later learn.
Yes. We told that he's been fired I forget why he said that. That he just was erratic or something.
Yeah, he didn't like him and thought he was not a good agent.
Right. So she WhatsApps she uses the WhatsApp app to contact him, and meanwhile, C is assassinated at his desk. The head of MI6. Now, someone says, shouldn't they have bulletproof glass at MI6? Someone told me that online.
One would think,
but it is a laser bolt, so I'm not sure they're prepared for that. So it's hard to blame them for that. And if you've seen Spyfall, the MI6 headquarters is just it's bad guys can get in there and blow it up. So
okay.
The Bond movie.
I have not seen Spyfall.
Oh yes, the MI6 the building gets really wrecked. So she gets a photo back from O on WhatsApp, and it's steganography. It's coded in steganography, which is encoding data in an image, which is very interesting given the resolution of what the big plot is in this episode.
Yeah, data encoded in something that looks like something else.
Right. Very poetic of the villain, shall we say. But meanwhile, an alien starts to come through the door, walk through literally not through the doorway, but through the door itself. So the
special effects are attacking again.
Yes, the glowy, the light bulb aliens. But they take off first, and then they decide that they're going to split up. Yaz and Ryan are going to go undercover to check out Daniel Barton at his headquarters in Mountain View, California, or wherever the Vor is, the Google analog of Vor, while the doctor and Graham are going to Australia to see O, who is hiding out in the outback.
Yeah, and there's an interesting moment during the special effect attack because they for once they get in the TARDIS and start to run.
Yes.
Right. It's not the we must stay here business. They get in the TARDIS and start to run. The doctor is explaining that she once took a correspondence course in steganography. Yeah. And as she's explaining that, the special effects starts to phase through the TARDIS's door. And this is something that very rarely happens on Doctor Who. Very few things can get into the TARDIS like that. It has happened on occasion, like in the Psychic Circus episode in the Seventh Doctor's time, but when an advertising thing got in. But it's very rare for that to happen. And the companions are like, I didn't know anything could get into the TARDIS like this. And the doctor is, neither did I. But then they vorp out of there and leave the special effect behind so it doesn't travel with them.
That's, yes, very good. So Ryan and Yaz, they pose as a journalist and a photojournalist and to go and they hack Daniel Barton's calendar to set up a meeting with him and all of that.
I would notice if things are showing up on my calendar that I don't remember setting up. I mean,
Yeah, apparently he has a staff who manages his calendar for him. So maybe if you're a big time CEO, things show up and you don't recognize it. People got fired apparently, so good job there, going doctor, and the campaign is getting people fired.
Well, considering who they were working for in the end.
Yeah, right. They're probably better off. And then now the doctor and Graham are in the Great Victoria Desert in Australia.
The doctor says she once lived in the outback for 123 years.
Right. I wonder when that was. As the 13th Doctor or as the previous one?
Who knows?
Yep. So I think Father Corey sent me a message. He didn't include it in his comments that we'll hear about later, but he did send a message that he thought later about, does this make the Wizard of Oz being Australia? Is it a Wizard of Oz reference? This morning. So that good call, that one, Father Corey. So meanwhile, there's some Australian Secret Service there who's there to guard the Doctor and from alien attack. They are completely outmatched and incompetent, unfortunately. Like they just do everything wrong. But we'll see that in a bit.
Yeah. We get to meet though, and he's a really nice guy. He's young, he's handsome, he's apparently of descent of Indian subcontinent extraction. He's a curious guy. He's got a playful side. He has a complete set of the Fortean Times, which is great. For people who may not be aware, Charles Fort was a researcher in the early 20th century of what we now would call the paranormal. And so he founded an organization that still publishes a magazine called the Fortean Times, where they document all kinds of weird stuff that happens, UFO sightings, raining frogs from the sky, all kinds of different things like that. And so the fact that would have a complete, he knows the Doctor, he studies weird phenomena, he's got the complete run of the Fortean Times. That's just awesome.
And it comes up that he has the complete MI6 record of the unexplained, which is essentially the British X-Files, right?
Yeah.
So that's fun, and so he does seem like an interesting, kind of cool character here. Where I'm interested in finding out more about this guy. Now switching back to Daniel Barton and Yaz and Ryan,
he is much less of a nice guy.
Yeah, he's he comes across as rich billionaire, kind of obnoxious, and Yaz is interviewing him.
He's not just obnoxious. He's really obnoxious. And he gets worse as the two-parter progresses.
Right.
I found it interesting. And, I'll when I see the series doing little SJW things, I'll sometimes call it out. I mean, not all the time because, who cares?
Yeah.
But when they cut the other way, I want to give them credit. Because one of the things they do with Barton is he talks about, the actor who plays him happens to be black. And he talks about the fact that I was one of the few non-white faces in my school or whatever coming up. And now look at what a great success I am. And normally in media today, if someone points out I was one of the few non-white faces in this context, that's a setup for what a great guy I am.
Right.
It's like you're supposed to admire me now, and I triumphed over adversity, and I'm such a wonderful person, and I'm better than all those white faces that had privilege. Okay. That is true in some contexts. But the thing is, in SJW text, it's always the case.
Right.
And here it's not. Because this guy is still an evil jerk. In fact, he's positively genocidal, right, as we will later learn.
He is the bad guy, or half of it,
one of the bad guys.
Yeah.
And so they set up what would have been a standard SJW virtue signal, and then they undercut it. And so I want to give them credit for that. They didn't play the new SJW stereotype. They subverted the stereotype.
Right, and that's kind of subverting the audience expectations, perhaps, which is clever. And they use some spy technology or Time Lord technology, I'm not sure which it is yet, to scan him. They duplicate his employee ID, and they determine that he's only 93% human, his DNA, which is interesting, and we'll come up later why that is. Because that doesn't happen through breeding, like crossbreeding. There's no way to come up with just 7% human.
Well,
or non-human.
if you go back enough in the grandparents, I mean,
you have to go pretty far back.
Yeah.
So, but he invites them to his birthday party the next day because he has to cut the meeting short. And meanwhile, back in Oz, the doctor can't get a reading on her sonic. Something is stalking them in the house, and she can't get a reading on the things that are stalking them. It's nighttime. These strange creatures, the special effects, as we said, the light bulb aliens, attack the guards. They manage to repel them all, but one, which they trap in a box that O had set up as a snare, and then they zap it repeatedly. And it says it comes from far beyond, and that it takes the basic human form to mock them. It says that that these aliens
when it says far beyond, it's far beyond your understanding. So not even another planet or something, just way beyond whatever you understand.
Right. And it says ominously that they are stable now and can take over the universe, which is once again was one of our long running complaints with Doctor Who, the new Doctor Who, is we always have to have universe spanning or world spanning consequences as opposed to smaller stories, which are nice, and hopefully we'll get some of those. But yeah, it's not a big everything will die.
What I do like though here is the Doctor is genuinely scared.
Yeah,
and that tells the audience this is actually scary. This is not. Anytime the Doctor is cockily strutting around pretending a danger is not a danger, it undercuts the danger for the audience.
Right.
And David Tennant and Matt Smith had a tendency to do that. But here we have a Doctor who is genuinely frightened of what's happening and does not understand it. And that makes it genuinely much more dramatic. That
is one of the things I like about the 13th Doctor, is that she is not the Time Lord triumphant who is always in control and always, supremely self-confident. It's more like what we had with the 7th Doctor or the 5th Doctor, and that sort of I'm not sure here if we're gonna win here. We have Yaz and Ryan. They sneak into Barton's office after hours, and he comes back, and they think he's found them, but in fact they find out that he's working with these light bulb aliens. And one of the aliens takes Yaz from Barton's office and transports her to someplace else.
Looks kind of like an underground seaweed farm.
I was gonna say it's like a kelp forest.
Underwater seaweed farm.
Yeah,
but no water.
But it doesn't do anything to Ryan. Ryan just kind of gets let go, which is interesting.
And it has electrical charges running up and down the seaweed, which makes it, you think it's kind of like a brain.
In fact, the Doctor will later on speculate that it might be that. We don't get a resolution on exactly what's going on, but well,
eventually it's revealed this is the realm that the light bulb aliens come from.
Right.
Oh, and the light bulb aliens are named cassava melons. So
yes, they are cassava. We'll just shorten it to cassavan for now. It'll just make that a little easier. So Yaz gets transported out of the kelp forest into the box in Australia. So like she's got like instant transport from San Francisco to Australia, which is very handy. I wish I had that.
Suddenly her words fail her, because when she's asked what was it like where you were, she says it was like nothingness, like nowhere. And I'm going, no, it was like an underwater kelp farm brain with no water.
Yeah, right. Say that. I'm sure it was an overwhelming experience. Let's just say. We have a scene of O and Graham talking about the Doctor. Graham, the O just references that when she was a man, and Graham says, I thought she was just joking when she said that she was a man before.
that was a nice line.
That was good. And then
that is, I mean, unless you understand what the Doctor is, you would assume 30 minutes ago I was an angry Scottish man. You would assume that was a joke.
Right. And in fact, that becomes something that the companions address a couple times in these two episodes, is we don't really know that much about the Doctor. We really don't know where she's from, what she is, or anything like that.
And that is the trait that the Doctor that comes out about this Doctor by the over the course of this two-parter. We kind of blew past it in the first season, but she's been traveling with these companions for at least a year. They do not know that she's a Time Lord.
Right.
She has been the most secretive about her past than any doctor since the second.
Although
only the first and second doctors were this secretive with their companions about who they were and where they were from and what their race was like.
Although the David Tennant's doctor, the 10th Doctor, he was a little cagey. Like took Martha a while. Yeah.
And we're heading into the Martha moment with these companions where she reveals herself to them.
Right.
But this is bigger than what happened with Martha, because she only traveled with the Doctor like a couple of adventures before she insisted on knowing who he was.
Right.
How do you meet someone who has a time machine that will take you anywhere in the universe?
Right.
And not say, so tell me about this.
Yeah,
where did this come from? How did you get it? Where are you from? What's your name? I mean, all of those questions should come up within a year.
Yes. There's got to be downtime. We were all sitting around having a cup of tea and like, so tell me about where you grew up. I mean, everyone does that, right? I mean, you would think. O does reveal that he has a library of files about the Doctor, which is interesting. And then
and he notes there's a lot of inconsistencies, but he's got a shelf full of material that he's collected about the Doctor. He even invites Graham to take a look at it if he wants.
Yes.
And Graham is tempted, but in circumstances intervene to keep Graham from looking at the files.
Right. O says it's at the next point. He says that Barton can't be an alien. By the way, the Doctor must go and get Ryan and brings him back because everyone's together in O's cabin at this point. And O says that Barton can't be an alien because they're speculating if he's an alien, because there are thousands of photos of him over the years. And I'm thinking, why would that be a problem?
Yeah, especially for a tech guy. I mean, anybody can salt photos. I mean, it's not like we haven't seen salted histories and legends on the internet on Doctor Who before. I mean, the Master did that.
And
back in the Harold Saxon Master.
Exactly. And not to mention the fact that he could be a replacement. Like he could, there have been cases where people have been replaced with doubles. So, I mean, it's... Yeah. So anyway,
or given that it's only 93% human, I mean, he could have had recent genetic engineering. That would be the most logical inference.
Right. Now, then we get some fourth wall breaking a little bit, like the high tech conspiracy theory, how the tech industry is all conspiring to steal all of our information, all our data, and I was thinking this is sort of just a new version of the old military-industrial complex worries that we used to have back in the 70s and 80s. The military-industrial complex is conspiring to create war to make markets for their stuff.
And before that, it was worried about scientists. You scientists are doing these things, and it's going to end life and blah, blah, blah. It's the current social worry, moral panic thing.
Right. And that becomes a key to this episode's plot. So they find out that there are hundreds of alien spies embedded all over the Earth, according to this map that they find on this obscure server in one of Barton's companies.
Which then, as further layers are decrypted, turns out to be like 8 different maps. And the Doctor is like, what, are these multiple worlds?
Right. And then O asks the question. He says, if they're spies, then you have to ask yourself, who's the spy master?
Yeah. Natural question.
And that's when I started thinking, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So they dress up and go to...
The line did stand out a little bit.
Yes,
Like they could have done a little bit more to get us to that line in a more natural way.
Right. I think they wanted to kind of hang a flag on that one and just say, spy master, huh? It's interesting you should say that. So they get dressed to the nines, and they go to Barton's Casino Royale party.
8.5 in the Doctor's case. She's still got those boots.
She's got those awful shoes. It's like her and Rey from Star Wars. Like they both have these awful shoes. I'm not sure. Like I'm not particularly interested in women's footwear, but they're just like these awful looking boots that go with nothing that they're wearing, and they look weird.
And fashion sometimes go in weird directions. I mean, I remember back in the 90s, there was the whole grunge look.
Oh, yeah, the Doc Martens.
And it's, I mean, I was tempted at one, and of course I didn't, and I was, too old to be part of the grunge thing. But I was tempted at one point. I saw someone, and I felt like saying, are you trying to look ugly? Right. Because the person would not look ugly, but they had made themselves up in such a way. It's like, Why?
Well, these. It's so, I don't know. I don't understand fashion, so I'm not the one to speaking. Maybe other people, listeners, could chime in if they understand more. But I just don't understand. I get the outfit. I like the coat and the shirt, and it portrays a certain sense of personality with the Doctor. I don't get these weird boots that she wears everywhere. It's maybe it's just a quirk. Maybe it's like the celery with the Fifth Doctor. Who knows? But
I'm not. I find the current Doctor's costume mildly annoing. Frankly, I like the Sixth Doctor's Technicolor Dreamcoat.
No. Can you imagine if they'd done that?
It's not like I hate it. It's not like I loathe it. It's just kind of mildly annoying.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say they go to this party. Where
there are no guards at all out front of Steve Jobs's front gate.
Right. To watch the TARDIS landing in the vineyard.
Yeah, and then they walk past Chekhov's motorcycles.
Yes.
And they go into the James Bond Casino Royale party.
They do have to go to check in with the person at the door where she says, "I'm the Doctor," and and everyone goes with her. Like it's like we're all invited, I suppose. We're with her.
Because the Doctor said she could also hack the guy's diary, so she got on the guest list.
Right. So she confronts Barton. She tells him, I know who you are. I know what you're doing. And he denies. And so then he goes and leaves, and they chase him on motorcycles. Well, I don't know if you want to mention anything that happens at the party. There's some fun scenes of them playing the games.
It's nice seeing them playing the game, and the Doctor's like playing one game with dice and doesn't even realize the game she's playing.
Right, she thinks she's playing something called Snap, and they're playing 21 or something. I forget what it is. Yeah, that was kind of funny. It does definitely have a Casino Royale feel to it. There is a bit of repartee between Yaz and O that has it's more of that
little flirty.
Yeah, and there's more of the leaving some breadcrumbs for the observant viewer, I guess. But the main thing is they have to chase Barton. He gets into his limo and takes off to the vineyard, and they, of course, hop on the motorcycles to give chase. And I don't know why they didn't just get in the TARDIS. Doctor. What's that?
Very Seventh Doctor.
Yes. That was that was reminding me of that. But I was gonna say, you hop in the TARDIS and fly the TARDIS along behind him to chase him. Like
you could do that.
Barton shoots at him.
He starts shooting at him. I mean, he leans out the window. Doesn't let a security guard do it. He personally gets a gun, leans out the window, and starts shooting at him. And he is such a terrible shot. Well, I mean, sign that guy up for Imperial Stormtrooper right now. He's got what it takes.
On the other hand, driving in a car that's going through the vineyard, through over the dirt, I'm surprised that those bullets went anywhere near those motorcycles. But he was actually shooting those handlebars really good. Like those bullets was like those were like magnetic handlebars attracting those bullets. It was amazing. If I were O, I'd be a little upset at Barton, I think. But we'll get to that.
Well, yeah. But see, the thing, if you're going to, okay, so you could say a non-expert is not going to be able to compensate for the bumpy ground they're on.
Yeah.
Fine. But these people are not shooting at you on the motorcycles.
Right.
You can wait until you get to the main highway to start shooting at them when you won't have the bumpy ground.
That's right. So he goes to his airport, to where his private plane is, his big, it's an airliner style plane, and they sneak on board as it takes off. I have to say, if this is a private jet, it is not going to be set up in rows of seats like this. This is not how these big private jets are. It would be appointed more luxuriously.
Oh, okay. Well, he said that he has a corporate jet, but it still would be private. Yeah.
Yeah. It would still be. Yeah. But, it's a minor point. So the plane takes off, and they're in the air, and Barton is flying, and this is when. Yeah, right.
Actually, as they're about to take off, we see Barton get a phone call, and his phone lights up, and it says it says private number.
Right.
And we don't hear what happens with that phone call. But the plane takes off, and we have a super dramatic Dr. Sonics open the rear cargo hatch, and they all trundle up and chase the plane and hop onto the cargo hatch.
Right.
One by one.
And once they're airborne, we get the big reveal.
Yeah, because even though 70-year-old Graham, has managed to get on this plane, the one coming up behind is and he says, I was always terrible at sprinting.
Right. Which the doctor then says, I've read your file. I know you, and you actually were a champion runner. And this is when he reveals, yeah, that's because I'm the master.
Yeah.
And which is a lot of fun for fans, because we were wondering, what are we going to have the Return of the Master after Missy's departure in the 12th Doctor's final adventure?
And what will the next Master be like? And I did not expect to see the Master this soon.
No.
This was like wham. And I'd already liked this character. I mean, there's a moment earlier on where the Doctor says, fancy a trip in the box.
Right.
And you're thinking he's just someone who studied her, and like this is a fanboy trip for him. And he's like so excited to get to go in the TARDIS. And it adds this whole extra layer here. And I love Sacha Dhawan's performance in the reveal scene, because he, as soon as she points out, you were a champion sprinter at school, he's like, oh, well, you got me. Well done. And he could have rolled with it. He could have said, he could have played it out longer and said, yeah, but I've had I won one race and then I got an injury to my ankle.
Right.
Or something. He could have made up a lie to keep the charade going. But he doesn't want the charade to keep going. He wants this reveal. And he just relishes the reveal. And as he says, they don't understand what's happening. He says, well, you better look out the window. They do, and it's his house flying alongside them. And he says, I know it's a bit Wicked Witch of the West, but, you're getting the picture. Or
again, Wizard
not.
of Oz. Yeah. Yeah. The Wicked Witch of the West is another Wizard of Oz reference, so that's fun there. And Sacha Dhawan is like, he's like chewing the scenery with gusto. I mean, this is, but in a good way. This isn't like,
he's having
overdone.
Fun.
Yeah, I mean, he throws himself into this role. I don't know. I haven't seen any interviews with him. I don't know if he's a fan or how went around about preparing for this, but he has just thrown himself into this supervillain role, this nemesis role, which is a lot of fun. And we also get the return of something we haven't seen with the new Who Master, which is the tissue compression eliminator. Who is it he compressed that he showed in the box? Was it the real?
Oh, it was the original O.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah. So what he explains, because the Doctor's like, I've met O before, and she's doesn't know it, but she's met this Master before.
Right.
Because what he says happened was he found O, the real O, and ambushed him on his first day to work and tissue compressed him. So he's got him in a matchbox now. He's really tiny and dead.
Yep.
And he assumed his identity. So he was the one working for MI6 the whole time.
Right.
And the Doctor previously met this Master.
Yes.
And just didn't know he was the Master. But the reveal here is great because he says, I said you should look for the Spy Master, or should I say the Spy Master? And then and then he has this moment where he inhales audibly with this look of mixed horror and delight on his face. It's like, oh.
And then we see the Doctor's horror on her face as the realization moment. Yeah, that was really well done. I really like that part.
And he's clapping his hands with glee at how he's put one over on them, and he's just having so much fun. I immediately wanted to see more of this Master.
Yes.
It's like, this is I had imagined, like, how are they going to top Missy? And they can't really top Missy. I'm not looking for them to top Missy.
Right.
But
how will they follow
the Masters
her?
That are having fun with what they're doing are the most interesting Masters. And like Missy was clearly having fun.
Yes.
And so I want the Master to have fun with what he's doing. He needs to be angry and fly off the handle on occasion, but he also just needs to be someone who's enjoying himself, causing chaos.
Right.
And this Master does that, and it's like, I immediately want this guy to be on. I want a Big Finish audio set of this guy right now.
I have to say, we had good timing last week when we discussed the Big Finish audio of Mastermind, that episode.
Someone pointed that out on Facebook. It wrote, good timing.
Yes.
Before I had seen the episode and knew what the reveal was. And fortunately, Sacha Dhawan has already appeared in like 4 Big Finish things.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah. So, in fact, Big Finish, as of this morning, has a sale on those. So, if you're listening to this episode early enough, you may be able to pick them up for cheap.
But not as the Master. He was playing other roles.
He's not as the Master, but he is playing other roles. He also played Waris Hussein in An Adventure in Space and Time, the docudrama about the making of Doctor Who. He was the original director
That's
of
where
Doctor Who.
That face was very familiar. Yeah, that's where I'd seen him from. Because there's only like 8 actors in all of Britain, so that's why we keep seeing them over and over again.
Yeah, and he has worked in the Whoniverse before, and he was offered a part in last season's Demons of the Punjab, but he couldn't make it because he was filming something else, and so they just this season offered him the part of the Master without even auditioning him.
Ooh, cool. Well, I'm kind of glad he wasn't in Demons of the Punjab then, because he can be the Master now.
He is a good Master, and he's different enough than Missy, but preserves, especially in the first of these 2-parters, the elements of the Master that I want to see.
Yes. So we find out that Barton is no longer flying the plane. In his place is a bomb in the cockpit counting down, where it's enough to damage the plane but not blow it up, we're told, and that the Master, before he takes off... The
Master says it's got a short fuse. I can relate to that.
Right. And he tells the Doctor, everything you think you know is a lie, and leaves it at that. And then the aliens, the light bulb aliens, the Kasavans...
And he teleports out at that moment.
Yeah, he teleports out. The Kasavans show up, and they take the Doctor to their dimension or whatever.
Space.
Yep. Yeah. And they leave the companions on this plane that's crashing to die. And that's where the first episode ends, right there.
Yeah. I like how for once the Masters thought ahead, and it's like, you didn't really think I would not make that bomb sonic proof, did you?
Right.
And there are no parachutes on this plane.
Right. So the Doctor, we start the second episode with the Doctor in the brain space, and she encounters this woman, this obviously early 19th century British woman who thinks that she's paralyzed and having a
vision,
a mental vision, that she's not actually somewhere else, and that this is something that happens to her regularly, apparently. Meanwhile, the Doctor somehow left clues on the plane for Ryan, these little placards.
Right. So I wanted to mention this. The episode actually starts, with after the recap with the plane crashing, and we have this great shot because the cockpit has blown off of this plane as a result of the bomb. And what we do is we see the plane coming toward us, and we push through. The camera pushes through the exploded cockpit into the passenger cabin where the fam is.
Yes.
And so that's just a great shot. That is I love that direction.
Right.
As they're then in contorted positions hanging onto the seats, Ryan sees a nameplate. Sees a plate on the wall with his name.
Right.
And it leads him to the seat pocket of seat 4C, where he pulls out a laminated insert. And normally these things are like how to put on a life vest.
Yes.
But this one is how to land a plane without a cockpit.
Right. So he has to open this hatch in the floor and connect his phone to this cable that starts a video of the Doctor. Very much like Blink, where the Doctor is talking and responding to them in real time, but telling them, don't talk to the video. This isn't live. So, Graham, I told you not to talk to the video. That was fun.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. And apparently the Doctor set it up so that an app would download to Ryan's phone, and then he could auto land the plane using his phone, which is a nice little gimmick. We should get one of those in all planes.
Actually, we have something very close to it right now. This was one of the most believable things in this entire episode. Much more believable than the laser shoes.
Yes.
Because, and I love the timey-wiminess of this solution. It's like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
I thought the same thing. Yeah.
But you could do this thing of land the plane with your phone if you can establish the proper interface, because we now have automatic landing systems, and these are especially present in smaller planes.
Yep.
They're being rolled out to a broader audience, but one of the systems is so simple that a 3-year-old can do it. The instructions for how to operate the system amount to one sentence.
Right.
And the one sentence is push the big red button.
Right.
And what happens, your pilots have died, you push the big red button, the auto landing system comes on, it makes contact with the nearest airports, figures out which ones of them are within fuel range, and meanwhile it's talking to you to tell you everything's okay, here's what I'm doing now.
Right.
And it's talking to the control towers to say, I've got an emergency, we need you to clear all the flight paths, I'm coming in, and it lands the plane for you.
Right.
So this technology totally exists, and it's entirely reasonable that the doctor, could say, ooh, I need some car keys, so I'm going to leave them right here in the future. And here's an app for Ryan's phone that will totally do this.
Yeah, most airports have had instrument landing systems for many years. I mean, as long as the weather conditions are pretty good, you could just land the plane using the instrument landing system. But in this case, this is what it flies a lot further than they go transcontinental, transatlantic in this condition, which I think it pushes the bounds of believability just a bit, but it's okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, somehow they needed to they started in San Francisco and they end up in England.
Yeah.
And so even if this is a really fast plane, it's not a Concorde.
Yeah.
Exactly. Once they get over the ocean, it's explainable if there's unseen time here.
Right.
That's why it didn't land in the middle of the ocean.
Right. That's a long trip, but yeah, we'll put headcanon on that. So
yeah.
we get this scene of Barton and now we'll call him the Master in the Master's TARDIS, the cabin, and they talk about their plan and how things aren't going according to what Barton thought was the plan. So we have a bit of discord between Barton and the Master.
I noticed the Master seems to be having headaches because he keeps wincing.
Yeah, that's an interesting direction they have on that. There's no explanation in this episode on that, so maybe that'll come up in the future, or maybe he's just playing him that way, like the Master is. Yeah,
it may also be a callback to the Master's general craziness, like he's apparently always had the da 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 in his head.
Right. So
which in humans would be pulsatile tinnitus.
Right.
Oh, pulsatile tinnitus. But
that's right.
He's hearing his Time Lord heartbeat all the time.
So the Doctor wakes up in 19th century London. So she and this woman she encountered in the alien space go through. They kind of touch one of the aliens or go through one of the aliens. The
cassava melon aliens are functioning as doorways between their realm and ours. So like if one of them runs at you, you may end up in brain space. And so here we have the flip side of that. One of them shows up in brain space, and they go through him to get back to our world.
And they end up in 1834 in London in an exhibition of steampunk-era industrial gear.
Which they actually had those things. They would treat science demonstrations, science fairs, as if they were entertainment.
Steam-powered machine gun. The home hand grenade was particularly fun. I like that. So the companions find themselves in Essex in England, and they have some funny things, which must be in jokes for our British listeners about Essex. Graham says something about it. I didn't get the joke, but I knew that there was a joke being told. The Master shows up in 19th century England at this exhibition.
First of all, though, now so at the exhibition, when Anna wakes up, everyone's like, "Oh, good, you're not paralyzed anymore," because she has a history. Ada.
Yeah.
When Ada wakes up, everyone understands why. Okay, good. She's not paralyzed anymore. This is just an epileptic fit or something that happens to her occasionally.
Right.
But who is this other woman that's with you?
Right.
And the Doctor tries to hand wave over it and refuses to give up her secrets of how she miraculously appeared here. And it's like, you should all feel privileged that you witnessed an appearance of the marvelous apparating man, a lady. And I like that because she has been a man for 2,000 years. So,
it's easy to forget.
Like that. That's fun. That's not SJW. That's just fun.
Yes. And the Master shows up here and starts tissue compressing people, killing people at random. It's horrible.
It is so horrible and scary because we've never seen the tissue compression eliminator done like this before.
Yeah.
Normally he does it. Normally we see him like holding it on somebody, like in Terror of the Autons. Yep. We'll see him hold it on somebody. We'll see the end of it glow. And then we'll later see the shrunken body that's like down to Ken doll, Barbie doll size.
Yeah.
In this, he just points it at a person and they shrink in midair to being like 1 inch tall.
Yeah.
And it's just, boop, that person is a little tiny 1 inch doll now.
And dead.
And dead.
Yeah.
And he's just going, boop, boop. And then the little dolls will fall to the ground, and it is so scary.
It's somehow it's creepier and scarier than if he just shot them with a bullet.
Yeah,
there's something that's very horrifying to us about that. And he revels in the slaughter. He talks about how, it just makes me so giddy inside as I kill people. I mean, this is a really psychopathic master we have here. Mm-hmm. This guy is off the rocker. And so he makes the doctor kneel in front of him and forces her to call him master so that he doesn't keep killing other people.
And he says he has news from home.
Yes. And then
he doesn't get to deliver it because then Ada attacks him with the steam-powered machine gun, and the doctor says she doesn't approve. Because she just saved your life and didn't even kill him?
Right. I don't approve, but I'll make an exemption in this instance or something. But yeah.
And then Ada throws the home defense grenade at him, and the doctor positively approves of that. It's like, how is a grenade more moral than a gun?
Well,
guns at least are targeted.
Exactly.
Grenades are not. They're area devastation weapons.
Right. Well, it's not a gun. That's just the key. Yeah. That's the important thing. So we find out the master doesn't really. She points out that he doesn't really know the aliens. He doesn't know these Kasavans. He thinks he's, he tries to portray that he's in control, but he's really not. That he and Barton and the Kasavans are all sort of working together, but not quite.
And this is a typical master plot. I meant to mention this in our discussion of the first episode after the reveal, because so the master's just a madman with a box.
Yes.
The master's just like the doctor. He doesn't have any intrinsic power base. His only superpower is hypnosis, which the doctor could do if the doctor wanted, but the doctor's a nice person.
Right.
So he's no more powerful than an ordinary Time Lord. That means in order for him to be a big threat, he needs to ally himself with someone. And so that's the standard master plot, going all the way back to his original introduction in Terror of the Autons. The Autons were his army. He's the one who thinks he's in control of them, but eventually one or the other or both betrays the other.
Right.
That's the standard master plot.
Yes.
And the only notable, there are some exceptions, but the only one I can think of where a betrayal like that doesn't quite happen is when Missy has the Cybermen. She's built her new army and gives it to the doctor and says, "It's yours. Now you can fix all the things in the universe you don't like."
Right.
But normally the master finds an army, makes an alliance with it, and one or the other betrays. And that's how it falls apart.
That's right.
And that's exactly what happens here.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, this is right in line with how the master has worked before. So the companions in Essex are still dressed in their tuxedos, and they get this contact from Barton, who doxes them essentially and rewrites their history, tells them he's tracing them everywhere they go, has made them the most wanted criminals, and everyone's looking for them.
Yeah, and it's more than just doxing, because he doesn't just publish their address or their files. He makes up stuff. He's doctored the records to turn them into wanted criminals, and Ryan has the right idea of, we must immediately smash our phones.
Right. And
Yaz tries calling her mom to tell her not to worry and don't believe anything, and Ryan yanks it out of her hand and starts stomping on it, which is the right thing to do.
Right. And they end up going to a place that Graham takes them to, is a construction site where there are no cameras and nobody around to see them, which is another good idea.
And that's actually, it is, going to a construction site is a pretty good idea, because cameras are where things have already been built.
Right.
Your best chance of other than the total in nowhere countryside.
Yeah.
Your best chance in a city of finding a place where you can evade cameras is where something's under construction and the cameras haven't been put in yet.
Although sometimes there are security cameras on the perimeter.
Sometimes even then, yeah.
So the doctor goes with Ada to the home of this other fellow who was at the exhibition named Charles. Turns out his name is Charles Babbage, and she's the future Ada Lovelace. Not quite yet. She's not married yet.
Yes, and so this is nice. I like seeing Charles Babbage. I like seeing a historical character who doesn't immediately become the center of everything.
Yes. Well, let's
because.
Who is Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace?
Charles Babbage was the inventor of the analytical differential engine. It's basically an early analog computer.
Yes,
it wasn't electronic, but it was programmable. And Ada Lovelace is credited as the world's first computer programmer because she wrote a program to calculate Bernoulli numbers. Bernoulli numbers, it's a sequence of numbers that were discovered by the 17th century mathematician Jacob Bernoulli. It's kind of hard to describe them concisely, but they're very important in number theory.
Right.
And the 0th Bernoulli number is 1, and then the first Bernoulli number is plus or minus a half, and then plus 1/6, and then 0, and then minus 1/30th, and then 0, and except for 1, every other odd numbered Bernoulli number is 0. And they have various properties. They're linked to Pascal's triangle and pi and various other things. So that's why they're important in number theory, but they're hard to calculate.
Right.
Jacob Bernoulli himself, I think, only calculated the first 10. And so they're the kind of thing you would want a computer to calculate for you. And so in the 1800s, Ada Lovelace wrote the first computer program to come up with additional Bernoulli numbers.
And so is it right to call her the first computer scientist and not Babbage?
Well, he's like the first hardware guy and she's the first software guy.
Okay. That makes sense then. And the doctor finds it significant that these two people are connected to the aliens, that the aliens had visited them. And in fact, she notices this wireframe sculpture in Babbage's parlor that we've seen both in the Master's TARDIS and in Barton's office. And she figures out it's a gateway for the Cassavans to come through from their place to our place.
It's called the Silver Lady. And here's where we have the other kind of SJW moment in this, where Babbage refers to the Silver Lady and says, like every great lady, her purpose is as much ornamentation as function.
Although, to their credit, they don't make a big deal out of it. They don't have them like refuting him or anything. He just says this anachronistic thing.
They don't, but the Doctor and Ada Lovelace both give each other a knowing look at, oh, what a misogynist this guy is.
Right. And Ada is a bit, they do play her a bit like they do a lot of TV shows and movies do of historical women. She's a little more modern than she would have been. So
we're about to get a double dose of that, because in a few minutes they're going to meet Noor Inayat, blanking on her last name, her other last name, Khan, Noor Inayat Khan. And so we have the Doctor teaming up with two amazing historical women versus the misogynist historical man. Right.
Well, and there's we'll get to that in a second. I'll talk about that. We do find out that Ada's been having these paralysis episodes since she was 13. The Doctor explains that the map we saw in the Master's TARDIS of multiple Earths was not multiple Earths, but this Earth in multiple times, and that the Cassavans have been on Earth throughout all of time, not just throughout all the planet.
Since 1834, at least.
Right, since 1834. Right, and
since the development of computer technology.
And she uses the Silver Lady to summon a Cassavan, so that she can get back to her time, because she doesn't have the TARDIS. So she has to get back to 2019, 2020, whichever it is they're making her 2020. Yeah, and at the last second, Ada grabs her hand and gets pulled through, which makes them misfire a bit. But we'll get to that in a second.
Meanwhile, back in the present, the fam has decided that even without the Doctor, even if the Doctor never comes back, they're going to carry on. They're going to do whatever they can to defeat Barton. And they also realize they don't know anything about the Doctor not for lack of trying, but because she has dodged their questions.
Right.
And they resolve to ask again if she does get back.
And so they're making their plans, and they talk about what gear they have and that sort of thing. That's the main important part of that scene. The Doctor and Ada, meanwhile, have ended up in Paris in 1943. I find the dates significant.
Yeah.
1834, 1943, so they're reversed.
Yeah.
They don't make anything of it, but it's just the way it is. And we find out that the Master here is of course, a Nazi, because of what else is it going to be? And the Doctor makes a big deal of that, something of that. We
later learn he's got a facial Aryan perception filter, so they think he's Aryan.
Teutonic.
Or Teutonic.
Tiny Teutonic something or other. Yeah, I forget exactly what we called it, but yeah, they sort of hang a lantern on the fact that he's a Southwest Asian. So the Kasavans, meanwhile, in 2020 show up for the companions, and Graham has to dance to activate his laser spy shoes to shoot back at the Kasavans. I thought that was kind of funny.
Which is so ridiculous, but I'm not going to let it ruin the episode for me.
Right.
I can just accept it. They're just being silly here.
Well, all of the James Bond spy tools are somewhat ridiculous when you think about them. So then we have this scene of Barton back in San Francisco, or I think, or maybe, no, it's London, because I forget where it is. He's in a warehouse, and he's got his mom tied up there.
His mom hostage.
And there's this very odd scene of him, like, she's like tied to a chair, and he's like, Mom, I don't understand why you're not happy to see me. And, like, he's very like, wow, this guy is as cuckoo as the Master.
Yeah.
And
I didn't have a choice.
And he has the Kasavans attack her, and he says that you're the first one. Although she's technically not. The spies from the beginning of the first episode were the first, but
the first of the main wave of whatever is going to happen.
Right.
I do like, though, he's got these issues. It's like, Mom, I'm this great man in the world. I've done all this great stuff. Why can't you just say to me, well done? And she looks at him and says, well done, as she's tied to the chair with zip ties.
Right. She goes, can I go now? So back in Paris, they're back in Noor's apartment. Noor is a famous historical character. She was a British spy behind enemy lines during World War II.
She was an American and British spy and author.
Right. Yes.
And then volunteered to become a spy in France. And the Doctor informs us of her attributes, telling Ada she's just as impressive as you. It's like,
yeah, right.
Come on.
Yeah.
No informed attributes, please. What they don't say in this episode is she's going to live less than a year.
Oh, really?
The Nazis are going to catch her and execute her.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
I suppose I could see why they didn't bring it up. I mean,
I can see why they didn't bring it up too. It'd be a bit of a downer.
Yeah, it would introduce that element in it.
But as the Doctor, I mean, think about that. You would know these things. You're meeting. Oh, you're Noor in a yacht con. Wow, and you're gonna die in less than 12 months.
Right. Which makes me wonder, why did she bother wiping her memory at the end? But whatever. Maybe. Yeah. So the Master and the Nazis show up at Noor's apartment, and they shoot up the floor and leave. And I'm thinking, why? Like, what do you like? Well, would you not look to see that she was under there, that you killed her? Like, I don't understand that.
I interpreted it as they assumed she was under the bed, and the camera work. So they assumed that Noor has them hidden.
Yeah.
And based on the camera work, it looked like I thought they were implying the Doctor and Ada were under the bed, and they kind of shoot up the floor under the bed.
Okay.
But not the main part of the floor. And this is just the Master being vindictive, kind of like trying to want to kill the Doctor, maybe sort of, but kind of not wanting to.
Yeah.
Which is the way the Master always is. The Doctor wants to kill, the Master wants to kill the Doctor, but the Master also doesn't want to kill the Doctor.
Yeah.
And so he's like trying to kill the Doctor, but not in the most effective way possible.
Okay. All right. It's the Master being the Master, is in other words. So there is a nice little moment here where Ada looks out the window and sees Paris burning, during 1943, and she's disturbed by it. And the Doctor kind of reassures her, like, from Ada's point of view, is this the future I have to look forward to? This is what the future of the world is going to be? Is this burning? And the Doctor says that these are the dark times. The darkness never sustains. that she says, the darkness never persists. Good times are coming afterward. And so to Ada's point of view, there's going to be a long period of darkness which precedes a good time, a good period of the world, which is an interesting perspective for someone looking to the future. So I just thought that was an interesting way of kind of highlighting for us how when we look to the future, there's bad times, but there are bad times and there are good times. That's what the doctor's saying.
Also, this is, if you saw the trailers for the beginning for this season, there was a moment where you could see the doctor in a tuxedo in some kind of wooden structure. And she's saying, well, this isn't an ideal situation, but I can work with it, or words to that effect.
Right.
And that's from this scene. That's her and Ada in the floorboards.
Right.
But they don't seem to have used that line in this episode. That line apparently got cut.
That's funny that when trailers use pre-production footage or pre-finished footage. The companions, meanwhile, they've come up with a plan. They've used a classic British telephone box to for Yaz to make a phone call home to warn her parents, and then the bad agents, Barton's bad guys, show up to take them. But it was all a setup. They had trapped them, and Graham threatens them with his laser shoes, and they all hit the deck. And then Ryan tells them the plan. He monologues.
We totally trapped you here so we could do the following plan.
Yeah, he does the supervillain monologue, and Yaz's like, you just told him our plan.
I did love the fact they didn't reveal to us until they revealed it to the agents that this was all a plan, because it looks like they're just making a mistake, and are they going to get away with it? And then, they actually are being clever.
Right.
Until Ryan blurts out the plan. And it reminds me of one of my favorite moments in the finale of Battlestar Galactica, where you have the teams raiding the Cylon colony, and you have a confrontation between two Sharons, two of the Model 8 Cylons, who are on opposite sides. One of them is sided with the humans, and one of them is sided with the Cylons. And as they're about to kill the Cylon 8, the real 8 kind of says, here's what we're doing, and Starbuck is like, can you please not tell them the plan?
Right. That's right. So meanwhile, the doctor back in 1943 Paris uses Nora's wireless set to send Morse code out of the 4-tone signal to the master, the rhythm of two hearts. Which is a very nice callback to the 10th Doctor and the Harold Saxon Master.
The end of time. And you think about it, that's kind of, I was thinking about it earlier today, and that's kind of what you would hear potentially, depending on how the hearts are set up. Because a normal heart, what you hear is lub-dub, 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 lub-dub. But if you've got a bi-cardiac circulatory system, you would presumably have the heart so that they're not all firing exactly in time with each other. And you could get da-da-da-da, 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 da-da-da-da.
And then once he signals back from his Nazi bunker.
They have a force chat.
They have this psychic telepathic link, which is apparently something which has happened once before.
Yeah, Time Lords can do this. They're mildly telepathic normally.
Okay.
And so she even comments, he's not very far away, so I can do this.
And we haven't seen this in New Who. This was just the classic Who thing.
No, we've seen elements of Time Lord telepathy in New Who. The Doctor, for one thing, said early on if there were any other Time Lords out there, I would know it.
Right.
But
I'm thinking like this,
implying
this direct communication, though.
Well, that was implying some kind of ambient sense.
Oh, okay.
But the Doctor has more directly done telepathy in the episode The Lodger, where rather than explain who he is to Craig, he headbutts him and downloads it all at once and says, "Oh, I'm never doing that again."
Right, that's right. One of my favorite episodes. So she what she does is she tells the Master to meet her at the top of the Eiffel Tower, because where else are you going to meet in Paris? But at the top of the Eiffel Tower.
The Arch de Triomphe?
Right. Would be less exposed, that's for sure. I've been to the top of the Eiffel Tower. That was much smaller than the top of the Eiffel Tower is. Yeah. I know. There are
Champs-Élysées,
a nice cafe. We have some coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of places to meet in Paris. So he tells her that the Kasavans have been embedded throughout the universe already. When he encountered them, they were already there.
Because it has to be such universal stakes.
Exactly. And he convinced them they were just exploring, like, what is this universe and do we have to worry about it? But he gave them a better plan than their own of taking it over. And the doctor said the reason she and Yaz ended up in the alien space instead of getting killed by the aliens was that they were full of Artron energy and fizzing with time travel, I think as she put it. And that's
she
why
had non-human DNA.
Right. And so the aliens acted as gateways instead of just as killing devices, I guess. So they had to explain why the aliens transported them and didn't kill them like they did the agents and others.
Yeah, and this is another weird thing because Ada apparently did not disappear physically into their realm when she would get paralyzed. Other people would still see her, and it's like, okay, you're unresponsive. So something different was going on with Ada, apparently, than with the Doctor and Yaz, who just physically vanished. Time
travel, maybe, where she was being transported back to the very next microsecond that after she disappeared, perhaps? Yeah, it is. They kind of left that hanging there. The Master then reveals to her what he meant earlier by everything you knew before is a lie. He says, well, he doesn't reveal why the lie, but he does tell her that Gallifrey has been destroyed. This is why he's doing it. Gallifrey has been destroyed, and everyone there is dead again. And the Doctor thinks he's lying. Meanwhile,
but then he says you should really go home and look for yourself.
Right.
Also, as this conversation is happening, Ada and Noor are doing things surreptitiously on behalf of the Doctor. Noor is sending a transmission to London that the Doctor asked her to. Ada has a cell phone that she doesn't really understand, but the Doctor gave it to her and said, use this when you see something unusual. And the Doctor is doing something with her sonic behind her back as she's talking to the Master, and he's confessing his evil plan to her.
Right. And what happens is the message that Noor sent back to Britain was intended to be intercepted by the Nazis. That reveals that the Master is reveals, quote unquote, that the Master is a double agent for the Brits against the Nazis, who show up to arrest him. And meanwhile, she was using the sonic to turn off his Teutonic psychic paper thingy. Or
perception filter.
Perception filter. Yep. And so now
I wondered about that because if you've turned off the perception filter, my first thought was they'll just see him as a completely different person, in which case it's going to interfere with their ability to arrest him as the person they think he is. But maybe they mean, no, I still recognize it's you. I just never noticed you were from the Indian subcontinent before somehow.
I think that's how they've established this perception filter is working, is not so much that it's an illusion or camouflage or disguise, but just that I don't realize I'm seeing the thing that I'm seeing, that it's there, but I just doesn't make it.
In some cases. Yeah.
So the Doctor, meanwhile, goes and finds the Master's TARDIS along with Ada and Noor.
And I was really surprised that the Master's TARDIS didn't put up more of a fight. I mean, we know it when the Doctor's TARDIS doesn't like somebody.
Yep.
And the Master's TARDIS didn't have any problem with the Doctor using it.
Maybe the Master's TARDIS doesn't like the Master.
Well, could be. He could be a bad master.
Yeah, that wouldn't be surprised.
Or I assume that he, the two TARDISes may have some special relation of, okay, we've got to kind of keep our boys in harmony with each other somehow. I mean, we know they've got this rivalry, but they also really like each other, so we can work together.
Yeah, it's for their own good. So inside, she finds this temporal map of every person significant in the development of computers through history, starting with Ada Lovelace, which they don't really pay off why this is. I'm not sure what the point of it is because eventually it has to do with Barton's plan to rewrite everyone's DNA through their smartphones. So I'm not sure why you need to go back to Ada Lovelace to do that, but that they don't really pay that off.
It may have been that just this was when they started exploring our universe and they were interested in us developing computer technology, and that's when the Master found them, and they didn't have the ambition yet to do this to humanity, but they were just monitoring our technological development. But that's all headcanon.
Right.
because they don't establish it.
Right. So then we have Barton at WWDC or the CES or some press event like that, doing his Steve Jobs impression, and where he does
really
the one thing
sinister Steve Jobs impression.
Exactly. He thanks the world for giving him total access to everyone, everywhere, and all their data. And he says, "I'm not joking." He has to tell them, "I'm not being snarkily funny." And he sends a global message to every phone, every computer, every device, everywhere. Humanity is over. You have 3 minutes to prepare. It's just a very
just
super
so
villain.
he can monologue for another 3 minutes.
Right.
It's like, why aren't you doing this now?
And he says he's going to reformat the DNA of the whole of humanity to become storage devices, very efficient storage devices. And I'm thinking to myself,
he said the
why?
most efficient.
Right.
I know. This is the Soylent Green is people problem. This is doing something horrible to humans for some other purpose is horrifying, but it doesn't really bear a lot of scrutiny.
Right.
If you need, sure, okay, you can encode a lot of data in DNA, fine.
What are you storing?
You don't need to do that to people.
Well,
if you want an organic hard drive, build a bunch of organic hard drives.
But
it's got to be easier than what you're doing now.
Right. But then the question is, well, if you're going to convert all the people, then what data are you planning to store? Because there's no people to make data.
Presumably stuff of interest to cassava melons, but
I guess it's very strange that it doesn't make any sense.
Well fleshed out.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the master shows up at the warehouse. Okay, so the companions have gotten to the warehouse where Barton's mom, now dead and reprogrammed into a living hard drive. She's there, and they've shown up, and he's done his I'm on the screen and the bad thing is about to happen thing. And then the master shows up after having lived the 70 years from 1943.
77 years. Do you have any idea how horrible it is living through the 20th century? It's like, actually, I do, yes.
Yes. And by the way, if you want to see the master live through the 20th century, you can go check out our review of Big Finish Mastermind last week.
Yeah. Also, this seems to be a callback to Curse of the Fatal Death. There have been indications lately of Curse of the Fatal Death, even though it's a comedy episode and clearly is not canon. People are playing with the concept of it as if it were canon. And so in that episode, the master has to repeatedly live through events to get back up to the point in the plot where the doctor is.
Right.
And so that happens here. Also, it was the Bechdel test episode of Missy in the Diary of River Song, where Missy comments about, I'm not crawling through tunnels. I had enough of that on Tercerus, which is another Curse of the Fatal Death reference where the master has to repeatedly crawl through sewer lines.
Oh, very good. Very good. So so we have the conversion of humanity has begun. Everybody's being zapped by their smartphones and paralyzed and all the stuff. And then the aliens the aliens haven't shown up yet, but everyone's being converted. The doctor shows up and turns it off. It turns out she planted a virus into the Silver Lady a year previous to this point, so she traveled in time to a year previous. She knew what was going to happen, so she planted a virus that allowed her to turn it all off at the last second. I'm not sure why she didn't just turn it off, or prevent it from being able to happen in the first place.
Well, she sort of did. She says, if I program the Silver Lady, because she didn't know when this was all going to happen. So she programmed the Silver Lady that if it determines that there's a cassava melon army being built up to be stabilized, that's when it needs to deactivate.
Right. Okay. Well, again, it seems unnecessarily complex, but okay, that's fine. We're there. So it shuts down the conversion and it exiles the cassava melons back to their dimension. And they
apparently grow on those vines that we see.
Yes, that's those are the cassava melon vines, and they take the master with them. Because
the doctor plays the recording she made at the top of the Eiffel Tower with the sonic screwdriver of the master confessing how he was going to get rid of the aliens as soon as he was done with them. And he's like, don't listen to her. But they do. And I like it because for once the sonic screwdriver is doing something actually sonic, making a recording.
That's very sonic of it. And so the master is stuck in that dimension and we'll never see him again. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. Until later this season.
Yeah. The doctor returns Nor and Ada back to their times. removing
by the way, I love when the Doctor shows up with Ada and
Noor.
The companions are like, you have a lot of explaining to do.
Right.
Because they haven't seen the Doctor in ages. And the Doctor's like, what? And Graham is like, who are they? And are we being replaced?
Yes. That was good. No, they're just temporary. She removes herself from their memories. And
yeah, man, this is, especially with Ada. Ada is not like wanting this to happen.
Right.
And it's like resonances of Donna Noble. Is the Doctor just, I kind of had a bit of a problem with this. Not in principle, but that we've never seen the Doctor just do brain wipes like this casually before.
Right. It's but they created a problem for themselves. The writers did or Chibnall did, because here he has these very important historical figures, at least Ada Lovelace is, and you've dragged her through time. She knows too much. It would have messed up things to leave her as she was.
Yeah, you can always say it's a predestination paradox, and it's what caused Ada Lovelace to be able to do the things she did. So
I suppose
you don't need the brain wipes to get out of this as a writing situation.
Right. We do have a scene of the Doctor going when Ryan says, "Oh, good job leaving the clues for me and setting up the plane so we can land it." And she says, "What are you talking about?" And then she realizes she has to go set all that up, a la the Bill and Ted. And so we have a few scenes of her taking care of that. So she decides to go back to Gallifrey to check on it.
Yeah.
And we found out the Master wasn't lying.
Yeah, she sees the city, the main city on Gallifrey. It's the dome over it has been smashed. The bubble it's in has been smashed. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of fire and pits and stuff on the ground, and it's really not great. And
he left a message for her when she.
What's that?
The Master left a message for the Doctor.
Yeah, so she goes back into the TARDIS, and apparently what looks like her confession dial activates.
Yeah,
and a hologram of the Master appears, dressed very much like the First Doctor, and holding his lapels like the First Doctor. So visually harking back to the beginning of the show.
Right.
And he says, geolocation activated. If you're seeing this, you've been to Gallifrey. When I said someone did that, obviously I meant I did.
Right.
I had to make them pay for what I discovered. They lied to us. The founding fathers of Gallifrey, everything we were told was a lie. We are not who we think, you or I. The whole existence of our species built on the lie of the timeless child. Do you see it? It's buried deep in all our memories, in our identity. I'd tell you more, but why would I make it easy for you? It wasn't for me.
Right. And the timeless child is a reference to, from the second episode from last season, the Ghost Monument, when the remnant, which was those bioengineered strips of fabric that caused the Doctor to have some memories, this buried memory of the timeless child. And then she has this vision, a quick vision of that, but also of
a
young
child.
Woman. Yeah.
Apparently on Gallifrey. So we've now seen the timeless child.
Right.
The timeless child is a little girl. She's wearing an interesting kind of Asian looking dress, and she's next to this weird looking structure. Seems to be a building of some kind. And she looked dark complected. I'm not exactly sure, but we get this blurred image of now the timeless child that's apparently central to Gallifreyan history.
Right. Something central to their society that the founders, Rassilon and whatever, lied about. And
so let's talk a little bit about this and what it does for the show.
Okay.
On the one hand, so I like the idea. Now, back during the Seventh Doctor's time, there was a decision that had been made that the Time Lords had kind of lost their mystery, and we needed to make them more mysterious. And so the script editor for the show, Andrew Cartmel, came up with a plan known as the Cartmel Master Plan, which would imply that, and they got bits of this onto the screen, but not much of it before the series was canceled, so it's primarily explored in alternative media. But basically, the plan was to say the Doctor is not just an ordinary Time Lord, he's something much more than that. And that they did get on screen in Silver Nemesis, the 25th anniversary. But the reason he was supposed to be much more than an ordinary Time Lord is that Time Lord Society was supposed to have three founders: Rassilon, Omega, or Omega, as they say, and the Other. And the Other was going to be a proto version of the Doctor, who later fell into the genetic looms and came out as William Hartnell.
Okay.
And then met Susan, who was also a descendant of the Other and recognized him as her quote-unquote grandfather. So the Doctor was going to be one of the founders of Time Lord Society. And so when the Master says the founding fathers are involved in this, it's not clear to me from exactly what he says whether they are the subjects of the lie or they were the ones doing the lying, or both. Now, we have met both Rassilon and Omega, so it seems like they're not total lies. It seems like they're, whatever the lie is, it's something they told or is connected with them. It apparently goes to the core of Time Lord identity, and that makes it dangerous from a script writing perspective or from a storytelling perspective, because we need to have a certain kind of relationship with the Time Lords. They need to be people who are not altogether bad, because they're not altogether bad. And the Doctor is one of them. And we've met other good Time Lords, including Romana. But they also need to be not altogether good, because the Doctor needed to run away from them. And so we need to have a kind of ambiguous, morally neutral impression of who the Time Lords are, neither all good or all bad. But if you're saying that the Master has discovered something that would prompt him to genocide his own people, including all the children whose existence they put on the table explicitly in the 50th anniversary as the reason the Doctor did not genocide Gallifrey, then it needs to be something really bad. But how do you attribute that to all Time Lords as opposed to just a ruling elite? And so
I can see the Master doing that, attributing to all Time Lords.
Yeah, but the Doctor and the audience need to be able to some extent sympathize with what the Master did. Otherwise, it's just the Master's committed another atrocity here.
Right.
And that undercuts the devastatingness of the revelation of everything we believed is a lie. That needs to be devastating. And so we need to some extent, understand why the Master would do this. And I have a hard time thinking of exactly how they're going to pay this off in a satisfying way, because there are so many hoops they need to jump through to do that. Another of the hoops is we need to see accountability. If there is some horrible lie, we need to see Time Lord accountability for it. But how do you do that if he's just killed everybody?
Right. Well,
so what you just bring back everybody again just so you can hold them accountable and lecture them, or what?
That's I think that this is yet another that the Gallifrey is dead. Not really. It's going to be. I hate to say it, but I feel
Gallifrey,
like
the Master, can never be dead permanently. But if you bring them back immediately, it undercuts this thing, and it comes across as just a cheap shock value thing.
I hope it's not.
And I don't want Gallifrey to be gone at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we spent so long without Gallifrey, and we've seen so little of it since it came back. I would like to see, and none of what we've seen has been good. Since it came back, I'd like to have a chance to have a little Gallifrey bonding again before you take it away. And so while I appreciate the dramatic value of this, I'm also very worried about it in terms of how are they going to pay this off in a satisfying way. And frankly, I don't want Gallifrey to be gone at this point. I like mysteries. I'm interested in the Timeless Child, but man, they've really written themselves into a corner with this.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how they manage to get out of that. And then we have this one scene of the companions confronting the Doctor about their questions about who she really is.
And they have their Martha moment.
Yes, she gives them some basic answers, and that's it. And then she doesn't go into any detail. And then when
she does ask them if they have questions, and Graham says tons. But she's also delivered this in a way, just her performance is such that it's like, okay, I'm telling you this, but I really don't want you to ask a lot more.
Right. And Yaz says, "Can we go visit your home?" And she just says no. And that's that.
She says another time.
Another time, right.
And then immediately walks off, and we get a reverse angle shot of her looking anguished.
Yes.
Because we know as the audience that she's just seen her home destroyed, and she's not ready to deal with this emotionally yet.
And, another time means something's, when we're talking about a Time Lord, That can mean something very, very specific. So it's very interesting. Any final thoughts on this?
I enjoyed the first. I enjoyed both parts. I thought they're the best Chris Chibnall episodes ever, including things he wrote before he was showrunner.
Yep.
I think they're definitely the best things of the Jodie Whittaker era. I liked the first one more than the second.
Yep.
I liked the Master in particular more in the first because he's having fun.
Right.
He's not having fun as much in the second one. So, and that's okay. I mean, the Master's not always having fun.
Yeah.
But when they bring Sacha Dhawan, and he seems to have anglicized his name a little bit because he's got that DH on the front of it, which should suggest it should be more aspirated like Dhawan or Dawan.
Yeah.
But he seems to have anglicized it for the convenience of the English-speaking ear. But when they bring him back, which I'm anticipating no later than the two-parter that finishes this series, I want him to be having more fun.
Yeah.
Because I like that in the Master.
Well, that was what we loved about Missy, was that she just seemed to be having fun about it, even as she did dastardly things.
Yeah. Also, I'll be interested to see, we need more answers this season about the Timeless Child. An obvious way to proceed would be to have the Doctor go, I don't know if they'll do this, because they pretend as if the Doctor has to meet Gallifrey in the right order. So, like, you can't go back to Gallifrey's past before the Master destroyed it.
Right.
But that would be the logical thing to do if you're a time traveler. Let's go back to before the Master destroyed it, find out what this Timeless Child thing is, and stop the Master from destroying it.
Right, right. Is it a fixed point, something that prevents Time Lords from traveling back? Who knows? But
yeah. Well, it's against the law of time to violate your own timeline to meet yourself in that way or change your timeline. But the Time Lords don't seem to have a problem with it when you're saving their entire planet from destruction.
This is true. This is true. So, as I said at the top of our program, that Father Corey couldn't be with us, but he did record some of his thoughts, which we'll provide to you. It's not long, but we want to kind of give it to you as a special bonus episode. So that'll be appearing in this feed for the podcast not long after you get this episode. So you'll be able to listen to that separately, but we'll provide that for you. And that'll be good. We do have some feedback I do want to cover, some feedback from our Big Finish to 2019 episodes. I kind of like that little pun there. We do have from our discussion of in episode 157, the Big Finish Chimes of Midnight. Emma writes on Facebook, somehow this episode reminds me of the Matt Smith episode Hide, which takes place in the Haunted Mansion. The ghost from that episode was trapped in a different / bubble universe too. Fascinating to hear about the living house, though. I haven't listened to any Big Finish, but I still enjoyed these few episodes a lot. Thanks for the hard work, guys. So you're welcome, Emma. But we hope it encourages you to go listen to some Big Finish. There's some good stuff out there, and it's not very expensive. So there are some inexpensive episodes, just a couple bucks, and it's well worth looking for it. And then on the episode prior to that, episode 156, the Big Finish Trial of the Valeyard, Kathy writes via email, I was wondering if the word is vieillard, which is French for old man. In anglicized pronunciation, one would pronounce it Valeyard. And she says, I enjoy the Doctor Who podcast enormously, and Tom Baker is my doctor. So what do you think? Is that a reference to the French word?
Well, it could be somehow. I mean, it could be something the writers intended, but they definitely pronounce it Valeyard on the show. Or actually, they pronounce it two ways. They also pronounce it Valeyard.
Right. And
it is explained on screen that it means something like noble counselor in Gallifreyan.
Okay. But it's an interesting...
But it could still have a real-world origin.
Yep. So then that's it for our feedback. We love to get feedback from listeners and to share it with you all what we can on the podcast. Before we finish up on this extra long special episode covering the 2-part season premiere, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Charles W., Scott H., Laurent S., Dan F., and Cameron C. Their generous donations at sqpn.com make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. By the way, I also want to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us normally.
In our Christmas episode, The Chimes at Midnight, we started the episode with an excerpt from a 1960s song called, yes, believe it or not, I'm going to spend my Christmas with a Dalek.
Right.
And he ended the episode with more of that song, I'm going to spend my Christmas with a Dalek, but he did something fascinating to the audio. During the course of The Chimes at Midnight, we mentioned how one of the recurring lines of dialogue, whenever the characters were talking about Mrs. Baddeley's plum puddings, someone invariably says, it wouldn't be Christmas without them.
Right.
And so, just as a joke, whenever we as commentators mentioned the plum puddings, I would say, it wouldn't be Christmas without them. And so in the I'm going to spend my Christmas with a Dalek song at the end, whenever plum puddings get mentioned, Victor inserted me saying, it wouldn't be Christmas without them. And I didn't know he was going to do that. It was great. And I just wanted to give him his props for that. That was awesome.
Thank you, Victor. Yeah, given he's been great helping us out with editing stuff in his spare time. Given how quickly we want to turn around these Doctor Who podcasts, he's going to be helping us on some other things. But he's been so helpful, and we really do appreciate Victor helping us on it with the StarQuest podcasts. So, again, that's it. What did you think of Spyfall Parts 1 and 2? Let us know by commenting on this show at sqpn.com/Doctor Who or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or you can send us an email to drwho@sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time where we'll be discussing the next new episode of Doctor Who called Orphan 55.
Will you be my mummy?
I know. Yeah, it's apparently supposed to be very scary. So we'll see how it goes. I don't like scary, but we'll see how it goes. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, people get so offended when they say, "What are you doing in my liver again?"
Right. This is going to be fun.